Welcome to another Founder Wisdom Pod YC edition. We have Vamsi Saladi with us today. He's a CTO at Contour, also co-founder. Contour is a YC summer 2023 companies. Vamsi's in New York, and yeah, it's a pretty cool company. It's a voice agents companies, and yeah, it's for outsource call centers. And I had one call centers with 200 employees, so 3 to 4 years ago. So it's gonna be pretty fun one. A quick one about Vamsi has been a data scientist for Rocket Ship VC, which is quite an interesting one as well. We'll talk about that one. Software dev at HypeShot, course assistant at Stanford. You've also worked at AWS, so big experience there. I would sum it up as data science and also AI. So that's going to be a fun podcast today. Can I do a good intro, Vamsi? Can you
Oh
do a
yeah.
better job at that?
No, you did a great intro. Yeah, I've been a little bit all over throughout my life, but I did Rocket Ship, which was more like the VC world, Amazon, big tech. HypeShot was a startup, so I think I have a good flavor experience coming into this.
Right. And why launch your own company?
I think because of the experience where I've kind of tried all the different things before, I enjoyed my time working at a startup way more than anything else I ever did. The VC world was cool, but I think startups are much more fun.
And which of the startups you worked at proved to be a very good investment of your time, and what did you learn there?
Yeah, so I think there were two startups where I had a lot of learning experience and also just a lot of like growth and mindset. So the first one was Polar. That was around 2019, I want to say, and I was like an ML intern there. They were kind of like a computer vision startup, and I worked on like a really cool project, or what was a cool project in 2019, I guess. But it was the idea that like if you have group photos of people and some people are looking one way, some people have their eyes closed, whatever. It was building like a vision model where you could output an image where everyone is looking at the camera. So that was really fun. Learned a lot and learned how to learn in like a small group environment, like fast iteration, not much red tape. You can kind of just do what you need to do. And then the second one was HypeShot, which was much more recent, and it was actually a company started by one of my like good friends from high school, and he was just like, this was during COVID, and he was like, hey, like we both enjoy sports, and like I'm building something for sports streaming, like fantasy sports. Do you want to hop on and like help me out? And I was like, yeah, of course. I'm a huge sports person, and so I was like, yeah, let's do it. Learned a lot over COVID. Lived briefly in New York while working with them. And I think both of those together kind of told me, okay, this is where I want to be. I don't want to be in like Amazon or I don't want to be in BC.
Launch, but it's still like very scary. There's so many unknowns, and it's a totally different world, right? You said you're a sports person. Do you enjoy better watching sports or playing sports? What do you play?
Unfortunately, the startup life isn't great for playing sports, but
Well,
yeah,
it's a
I do
sport.
enjoy playing. I do enjoy playing. I played a little bit during like high school and then didn't really play during college, but I was like a martial artist. I played soccer and then I was also a gymnast for a little bit. And I still enjoy doing those, but right now I mostly watch.
Right. And describe the sport that is running at a YC company. Is it like 16-hour days? What a day in your life look like?
Um, it's rough. Especially the past like I think a week or so. It's been extremely busy because we're like starting to onboard some people, and it's just been a hectic, process. But honestly, it helps that I actually live with my co-founder, and so we can very tightly align and make sure we do everything together. But yeah, we will usually wake up together around like 8 or 8:30 in the morning, and from that point onwards, it's just work. We have like a little bit of time set apart for lunch and dinner, but we usually wrap up around 12 or 12:30, and then
So
just
how do
repeat.
your neighbors describe you?
Ooh, okay.
Two quiet
Thankfully,
guys
our
that hustle
actual
all the time and play
yeah.
music loud sometimes and shout when they win
uh,
deals.
no. I think most of our neighbors think we're pretty quiet, um, because we're not really like we're pretty like locked in. I think we're pretty focused. We don't have like a ton of like noise around us when we work, and I think we prefer it that way. There have been times in the past where we worked in like co-working spaces. I think those neighbors might describe us differently.
And you're building and he's raising, selling. Like, how does that work?
Yeah, we have a pretty good separation, but it helps that both of us are technical. So actually, for like a good bit of time, we both built, and even like now, we both kind of build. I think, yeah, if it comes down to it, technically I do more of the building, but and he does more of the sales, more of the marketing, more of the fundraising. But both of us can code, so that's a helpful thing to
Vibe coding a lot nowadays.
have. um, Not really. I feel like I'm not a huge vibe coding person.
Why is that?
This is gonna make me sound really old, but I think
You're
there's something
purists.
like yeah, there's something about just like knowing what you're coding, being prototyping, like planning it out, and just like writing code yourself. Obviously, like we still use Cursor, we still use Claude, we still use GPT, but it's more as an auxiliary tool and not as like the primary driver of productivity.
And maybe you're just not at this stage of vibe coding, which is more prototype, right? You've been building this
Yeah,
for 2 years already, so you have a
yeah.
solid code base.
Mhm.
How many times have you pivoted since you started in 23, or has the concept remained the same?
No, so there's been one big pivot. What we went through YC with and what we raised our initial pre-seed with was actually one idea, and so that was more in like the QA dev tool space. And then this kind of voice support platform was born around, let's say, 5 or 6 months ago.
And it seems to be to me that there's a couple of voice companies doing that right now, right? Like, are you
Mhm.
keeping track of them? Are you like
Yeah.
competing, frenemies, sort of?
No, I think one of the things I like about kind of other YC founders is, for the most part, we're pretty transparent because we're part of the same community, and so we can see what
Of
everyone else is
course.
doing. Um, I don't think the space is a winner take all, and so we're happy to help each other and kind of work together.
And what are you building now, and what makes you different? Do you feel you have a
Mhm.
product market fit at the moment?
Yeah, so we're building an AI customer support platform specifically for financial institutions. So think banks, credit unions, B2C fintechs. It's an omni-channel support platform where our flagship product is the voice. And so we, emphasize that a lot, but we do kind of do the other channels as well. And I would probably say that we're like it's still a little pre-PMF. Um, we have, people interested using pilots, all that stuff, but I don't think we're at PMF yet.
So is it voice and chat all in one? Like, then I see your ideal customer persona would be the banks, fintechs, and
Mhm,
credit unions. Can you give me a use case? Let's say I'm a bank. Like, how would I
mhm.
use you precisely?
Yeah, sure. So, for example, if say you have like a support staff, because you're like a pretty big bank, you can use Contour both as a co-pilot, but also in its autonomous form. So maybe for, say you have like a phone line or you have a call center, and you're paying them for like, say 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. You can enlist Contour to be your support line over the weekends or during the off hours. If you already have a support team, then you can use the Contour Copilot, where it can help them be more efficient in how they answer tickets and solve tickets, but it doesn't like technically replace them. And then if you're a small company, if you're like a Series A startup maybe, and you're like a B2C fintech, and you don't have a support team, then you can just use Contour for everything. It can be your chatbot, it can be your voice line, it can be your email support, and just kind of handle everything for you.
And who are the big players you'd be replacing, or are these banks not even using SaaS? They're using their own custom platforms.
Yeah, so there's two categories. Some people do have their own, custom platform, but for the most part, people use like companies like Intercom, which are also like support platforms, kind of more geared towards financial institutions. Um, or they
Or
use like
Zendesk?
yeah, Zendesk is more like the ticketing system, but it has some AI features, but it's not really that good. um, but yeah, it would be kind of in that vein, and we don't necessarily want to replace the ticketing system, so we can work with Zendesk, for example. we want to replace the actual support. So that's usually either their own internal support team, or they have like an external call center or just outsourced, support staff.
Right. And in the 2 years you've been building, how many clients so far, and how do you determine which new feature to launch as the CTO?
Mhm. Um, so the first part, this has more been only going on for around 5 or 6 months, or this version of the product, I mean. So the old one, we had customers, we like raised a pre-seed. That was like a whole journey on its own. But this is a new one. This is a new journey. This one we have a few pilots right now. Um, no one's in production yet, but we feel pretty good about kind of where we are with the pilots. And then in terms of what to build next, I think that's always the tough question. But I think thankfully we're in a space where this is something a lot of banks want and a lot of fintechs want. They don't know exactly how they want it. They just want the problem to go away. And so that gives you a little bit of leeway as like the engineer, where you can be like, okay, this is the way to solve the problem, or this is the way to solve the problem, where you don't have to be like, oh, I have to build exactly like this product or this feature or this functionality.
And are you back in the ramen days nowadays? Does that feel sort of depressing, or do you still have fuel in the tank?
I think I have a lot of fuel in the tank right now. We have this like new shift has given us a lot of momentum. I think there's a big difference when you're working in like the dev tool space and when you're working in like the fintech world where you're selling more to like slightly bigger companies, like it's more driven, you're solving like big problems for them. As soon as you get like momentum, it just feeds on itself. And I think we've gotten a lot of momentum. And so we're just, riding the wave and seeing what we can do.
And how big are these problems? What paycheck would the bank be willing to send your way on a monthly basis? Would
Mhm.
it be on a per usage basis? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's usually an annual contract, but it is like usage based in the sense that we will estimate based on the pilot period what your volume is going to be over the course of the year and then charge based off of that. Now, if you're over or under, we can reimburse or charge overage and that's fine. But for banks, I think it obviously depends on the size of the bank, but maybe like a smaller regional bank or community bank, somewhere between like 50 to 100K is like a expected, contract. Um, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Do you need do you do demo calls yourself, or is that your co-founder? And do you actually need to meet with these banks, right? Which
Mhm.
most of the time are old people. Do you need to meet with them physically in New York?
um, it's true. We've worked with a lot of older folks, but no, we both do demo calls. I think we're both comfortable selling and we're both comfortable coding, and so I think we both do whatever needs to happen. In terms of meeting the banks, sometimes it helps, but it's usually before the sales process. I think doing discovery or getting the initial lead in person makes a huge difference in this industry. Because a lot of it is just about like, are you willing to trust like me as a founder slash our company to even get started? Because once you get started with them, this is a huge need. This is a problem they want a solution for, and so they're not going to not talk to you because it's not like important to them. They're usually not going to talk to you because they don't trust you or think you're too small or like have some like other concerns. And so meeting them in person helps a lot with that.
Yeah, very low churn, I would guess. Does your solution replace employees or amplifies them? Because I guess that would be at the friction point with them. They're
Yeah.
like anti-AI sort of folks.
Yeah. That's one of the biggest lessons we learned, I think, throughout our like startup journey is you have to find the right person to sell to. So for the old product, we sold a product to the person that it was going to replace. And naturally they were like, "Oh, we don't want that." Like, I don't
Even
want
though
that
it's a
here. Like,
reality.
exactly, yeah. And so we learned this time. And so we usually target kind of higher up in the chain. And for the most part, the actual product does save. Like it's like a cost cutting tool. You don't have to hire more people. You can replace some staff. You don't need to pay for a call center. But it also is kind of like amplifying for the current staff because we have a co-pilot as well. And so because we offer both, it's like a double whammy where you can both be more efficient with the people you have and you can, maybe not hire more people.
With your first pivot, how did you manage investors' expectations? Because I mean, they know that YC companies pivot a lot, right? So they
Hmm.
know that their money might be invested into a vehicle that might change course with
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Were they just down with that? How did
Hmm.
you manage that pivot?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think our investors were incredibly understanding. And yeah, as you said, I think it's expected from YC companies to, kind of pivot around until they find the sweet spot. And so with the first pivot, we ended up doing that product for almost like a year and a half, right? And so we put in a lot of time. We had customers, we had usage, like it felt like the real thing. And so when we decided to pivot, it was a tough decision because you were leaving like users on the table, you're leaving like money on the table. um, but I think our investors realized the same things that we did, which is we're selling in an industry where every single sale is like an uphill battle. The need, like the burning need, is just not there yet. And so everything felt like grimy and forced, and it was like so much effort to like get people to use it. And going from that to an industry and a problem where everyone wants a solution, and as long as you're like performant and like compliant and relatively cheap, like anyone will pay for you. It's like a huge difference in mindset and perspective. And so our
But how did
investors were
how
like,
did
yeah.
you know that? Like, was it YC mentors telling you that, and you seeing YC peers like seeing making 2, 3, 10x more than you did?
um, I think it was partly us knowing that voice is like, it felt like the next big thing. It was like this was 6, 7 months ago, where before all the new like Sesame or like all the new models in the 11 Labs and all that stuff, like when voice was still pretty young, we were like, okay, this feels like a space that's about to blow up, and we're still pretty early into that journey. So there's obviously a lot of opportunity. And then when it came to the vertical, like because you could do general voice, right? You could be like a VAPI or like a bland. Um, but in terms of like where we wanted to focus or what we wanted to solve, I think we just had some friends in the like fintech world, and they were like, "Look, I sell to fintechs, and this is a problem for them. Like they've told us this. They solve other stuff, but like if you guys want to tackle this problem, like go for it."
Oh
And
man.
so we were like, "Okay, we see the opportunity. We like the voice like world, and we like the technology, and we're both like we have experience in it." And so we're like, "Let's give it a shot."
You have good friends, man. They give you top alphas. Sesame is crazy good, right? Like can't even compare it to ChatGPT's voice AI.
No, yeah.
It's so crazy good. What are you seeing in that space as well? What's the other company sent something? What's exciting to me is that I could have
Mm,
agents call for me. I
yeah,
could even do this podcast on a phone call,
yeah.
right? I could
Mhm.
cold call people straight up and be like, "Hey, I'm doing a pod. Like, do you want to record it right now?"
Yeah.
That's exciting to me. What else are you seeing in that space? What kind of features? What kind of companies are leading the way?
Mhm. Sesame is a really good one for sure. Um, I know they got into some like trouble because like they like fake open sourced it, which is kind of annoying. But I still think they have a lot of potential there. And in terms of other companies, I think there's like the whole like horizontal approach, right? Like if you're going to be like a bland or a retail or a VAPI, these are all companies that are trying to be like the voice provider, and they're all successful kind of in their own way. And then there's more like verticalized companies that are doing voice, but like in very specific use cases. Um, like there's a Voca is one of our friends, and they do like voice agents for HVAC units, like one extremely specific use case, right? Like you wouldn't think it's like a massive industry, but like it is. And so they're able to focus on that one vertical and also be successful.
Yeah, dude, the HVAC in the US, it's humongous. Like these are
Yeah.
good old schools, like salesmen knocking on your door and so forth.
Hmm.
It's so big.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's a YC model as well, right? Like crack one specific niche. Because my next
Yeah.
question is like, why don't you start your own Vapi or Sesame? I guess
Mm,
it's like folks
yeah.
that are at different stage of their careers, know a bunch of investors as well. They have
Hmm.
like huge experience at OpenAI, for example, and yeah, why don't you build your own? Is it like make a bunch of money, make cash flow, satisfy investors, and eventually start a new segments? Is that how
Hmm.
it works?
Kind of. I think one of the dangers of trying to solve like the whole problem is oftentimes you end up solving nothing. And so it's like a weird balance to strike there. And so we wanted to be very kind of focused and determined on what exactly we solved. And so we chose specifically consumer facing like financial institutions, so banks, credit unions, B2C fintechs. And we chose specifically that we wanted to help with customer communications and support. And so we do like compliance workflows, for example. We have like a bunch of like policies and securities in place so that they can be sure that like, you know, data is good and like communications are going to be good. There's guardrails on what the agent can do. They can trust it to handle like a lot of volume. And there's so many things that are specific to this industry. So for example, if we have a chat agent, it's mostly useless unless it actually solves the issue for you or solves the issue for the end client rather. And so it needs to be able to take actions. So that's like integrations with digital payments, like banking cores, like refund a payment or like enable bill pay. Like instead
Unblock
of
my
like calling
goddamn
in,
card.
yeah, exactly. Like instead of calling in to like Chase or like Capital One, imagine that you could just like call into like the voice agent or even like use the chat agent and just be like, oh, I want to set up like bill pay on the second for like X product. And you can just like type that in and like the support agent will just go do that. And you don't have to like, there's no human involved. You don't have to think about it. It's just done. And so
Oh
we
man,
want to solve that problem.
it's a humongous problem. Like your friend
Mhm.
said, I don't even think you needed your friend, right? You're just a customer of Chase
Yeah.
yourself, for example,
Yeah.
and it's a terrible experience, right? Like you need the codes there, you need to call, you need to wait. So it's just a very inconsistent experience
Mhm.
throughout, and most banks know they're probably losing customers, right? But even
Yeah.
if I run away from my bank as a customer, I'll go to another bank that haven't tracked customer service too. So it's like
Yeah.
it's more of the same. It's throughout the industry, and that's
Exactly.
a huge opportunity for you.
Yeah, exactly. And so we're very excited about like this space and this problem because it's an industry where there's a ton of people. Like each bank has
Suffering.
so many customers that it manages. Each like credit union has so many customers it manages. And so the opportunity there is quite massive. And there's like an entry barrier because you need to get and establish a ton of trust in the space because it's money. Like it's like the most sensitive thing you can like handle. And
Right.
so,
And do you need to be compliant on your end? Do you need like
oh yes.
certifications? And so, yeah, that's a
Yeah.
silly question, right?
No, yeah. There's a ton of like restrictions and rules that go into place about like what we can do, when we can do them, what we're allowed access to and not allowed access to. I think the good thing about working in the space is once you've established like the compliant nature of your product and once you've established trust with your customers, it goes a long way. And it's really hard to like switch off of you
And who's in charge of the compliance or customer trust part of that? And was that more frustrating for you than to build code?
then. Honestly, a little bit. So the actual SOC 2 compliance, my co-founder is handling, and so he probably has more, issues and problems with it than I
Psychotherapist
do.
bills.
Yeah. It's a
I know a
crazy
good
process.
psychotherapist in New York, by the way, one of my clients. Shout out to Nick Samstag for anyone dealing with compliance.
Okay, maybe I'll need his contact just in case.
He's in
But
the
no,
financial district too. I'll give
mm,
you his contact after that. But yeah, one last question because I know we're on time already.
mhm.
Have you cracked a 50 to 100K deal? What's next for you this year?
Yeah, I think that is. We are in pilots for those deals with like a few different people. And I think if we can, close everything, it's going to be such a massive stamp for us. Um, Obviously, our next like real goal, because we feel comfortable with this, is kind of cracking like the 20 million and up kind of bank, like the much larger bank. Um, Maybe not the level of like Chase, but like, like in between
20
Chase and like a
billion.
local bank. Yeah. Um, so that's kind of the goal, and we want to slowly work our way up the size chain.
Where can people find out more about you, Vamsi?
Yeah, follow our company on Twitter and LinkedIn, and then also follow me on Twitter and LinkedIn. I'll have the links up when I post this, but keep track of our journey. We're planning on putting out a lot more content, both with people like you who host these like great podcasts for founders to talk, and then also just like kind of our own content because it's easy to demo. Our voice agent. It's like fun, it's flashy, and so we're going to try to do more funny content and marketing content as well.
There you go. Yeah, shameless plug on my founder humor newsletter. That's quite fun for that. I have an algorithm, a GPT for you to use, and
Ooh,
yeah,
okay.
follow Vamsi on Twitter, not X, Twitter, like not
Twitter.
the
Thank
Elon
you.
X, the
Yes.
Jack